Ladies and gentlemen, anger is one of the most misunderstood emotions in the human experience. From the time we're children, we're taught to fear it, to suppress it, to avoid it at all costs. We're told that anger is dangerous, that it's destructive, that it must be managed or medicated, but what we're rarely told is that anger is a signal. It's a messenger, not a menace. It tells us when something is deeply wrong. It tells us when our standards have been violated, when our boundaries have been crossed, when we've betrayed our own values or allowed others to. And most importantly, it tells us that something must change. If your life feels like it's falling apart, if you wake up with dread, if you feel like you're on autopilot and every day is just a repeat of mediocrity and misery, then you have every right to be angry. In fact, if you're not angry, you're probably still asleep to your own potential. Because anger, when channeled properly, is the fire that forges new realities. It's not something to run from, it's something to listen to understand, and to use. Now, let's be clear. Anger that is explosive, irrational, and directed outward without awareness becomes violence. That's not power, that's chaos. But anger that is grounded in self-awareness, that is internalized as clarity and urgency, becomes a transformative energy. It becomes fuel, it becomes motion, and that motion can break chains you didn't even know were around your mind. Look around at the people who have transformed their lives, people who have risen from rock bottom, who have changed their health, their finances, their relationships, their destiny. Do you think they did it by feeling meh? Do you think they woke up and just felt a little bored with how things were going? No, something snapped, something ignited. There was a moment of absolute, ruthless self-honesty. A moment when they looked at their life and said, "This is not good enough. I deserve more. I was born for more, and I will no longer accept this." That moment often comes from pain. And yes, anger. That anger becomes the inner alarm that says, "This is the last time I tolerate this." It's not negative, it's necessary. Because until you get angry enough with your current circumstances, you won't move. You'll rationalize. You'll adjust, you'll settle, you'll numb it out, you'll say maybe tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes 10 years of your life. But when anger hits you hard enough, when it cuts through the fog of excuses and makes you feel the cost of staying stuck, that's when you rise. That's when you stop blaming the world and start taking control of what you can change. Because you realize something crucial. You are not a tree. You're not rooted in place. You have the capacity to think, to decide, to act. But those capacities are dormant in people who are too comfortable being miserable. It takes anger to wake them up. Now let's talk about why most people avoid that anger. Because it hurts. Because it forces you to look at things you've buried, the truth about your relationships, the truth about your wasted time, the truth about your habits, your procrastination, your fears. But avoidance doesn't delete the pain, it delays the cure. When you suppress anger, you trap power. You take potential fuel for your transformation and lock it away, letting it rot inside. That's why people feel tired, uninspired, numb. They've been bottling their rage instead of using it as a call to rise. If your life is a mess right now, financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, then don't just get sad. Don't just wallow. Get furious, not at other people, not at fate, but at the fact that you've lived under your potential for so long. Get angry that you've allowed your standards to fall so far. Get angry that you've lied to yourself about what you're capable of. That rage can become your raw material, because when you transmute anger into action, when you take all that storming energy and direct it toward building something better, you become unstoppable. There is power in anger because it's honest. It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't sugarcoat. It says, something's wrong. Pay attention. But most people don't want to listen. They fear discomfort more than they desire growth. That's the trap. Comfort is the drug that kills more dreams than failure ever will. But anger breaks that comfort. It shakes you. It pulls the blindfold off and forces you to look. And the moment you look, really look, is the moment you begin to rise. You can't create real change from a lukewarm emotional state. True transformation doesn't come from apathy, it comes from fire. Fire that burns down old stories, old beliefs, old limitations. And what's left is space, space to rebuild, to recreate, to reimagine your life as it could be, as it should be. And that fire, it starts with a spark. That spark is anger, not rage, not violence, not victimhood, but a holy, righteous, centered anger, the kind of anger that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and says, I can't live like this anymore. The kind that makes you sit up, breathe deep, and say, that's it. From this day forward, I move differently. You don't need permission to feel it. You don't need validation. You don't need anyone to understand. This isn't about being politically correct, emotionally palatable, or socially acceptable. It's about being real, brutally real with yourself, because nothing changes until you decide that what you're living is unacceptable. Not sad, not unfortunate, unacceptable. And anger helps you make that decision without hesitation, without apology. The world will try to pacify you, distract you, entertain you, medicate you, but you weren't born to be pacified. You were born to wake up. You were born to disrupt. You were born to change the trajectory of your story. Anger can be the first tool in your toolbox. It's not the only one, but it might be the one you need right now. If you let it speak, it will point you to the exact place in your life that's been starving for truth and motion. If you bury it, you bury the map. Rejection is one of the most powerful emotional experiences a human being can go through. Whether it comes in the form of being told no, in a job interview, being turned down in a relationship, getting overlooked by a client, or simply not being seen or heard when you expected to be, rejection stings. It bruises the ego, it shakes confidence, it plants seeds of self doubt, but here's the part most people miss. Rejection isn't a dead end. It's not the universe slamming a door in your face out of cruelty. It's redirection. It's a reroute, not a ruin. The word no doesn't mean stop. It means look again, learn something, pivot, grow, evolve, sharpen your tools, refine your strategy, and come back stronger. The average person interprets no as a confirmation of inadequacy. They internalize it as evidence that they're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy. So they shrink, they give up too soon, they abandon the dream. But the truth is, every successful person has been told no, more times than the average person has even tried. They weren't immune to rejection, they were just conditioned to see it differently. They learned that no is part of the process, not the end of the road. They saw it as feedback, as course correction, as information that revealed what needed to change. If your life feels like it's full of closed doors, it's not because you're cursed. It's because you haven't yet reframed what a closed door really means. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe your skill set wasn't ready. Maybe your mindset wasn't aligned with the level of the opportunity. Maybe the door you were knocking on would have led to something that would have broken you, not blessed you. But from where you're standing, in the heat of rejection, all you feel is the cold hand of dismissal. And that's natural, but it's not final. You have to start seeing no as a teacher. The greatest breakthroughs in life rarely happen in moments of praise and applause. They happen after failure, after doors slammed shut, after humiliation, after loss. Those are the moments that sculpt you. That's when you get sharper, hungrier, clearer. When everything goes your way, you coast. But when the path gets blocked, you learn how to find another. You learn how to get creative. You learn how to become relentless. And that's what builds character. That's what builds power. Every no is secretly a test. The world is asking you, how bad do you want it? Are you going to fold the moment things don't go your way? Or are you going to rise, regroup, and return with more conviction than ever before? Because that's the price of real success. Not talent, not luck. Resilience, the ability to face rejection head on and say, that's fine, I'm not done. I'm just getting started. The danger is when people start collecting no's like wounds. They replay them over and over in their heads until those rejections become part of their identity. I wasn't picked. I was left out. They said no to me, and slowly they start to believe they're unworthy of a yes. They stop trying. They build a wall around their ambition to protect themselves from more pain. But in doing so, they also block out every future opportunity. You have to unlearn that habit. You have to teach yourself to look at rejection not as a scar, but as a signal. Something didn't work good. Now you know. Now you adapt. Now you move smarter. Now you increase your capacity. If you're hearing a lot of no's lately, it doesn't mean you're off track. It might mean you're closer than ever. Because the closer you get to the edge of your current comfort zone, the more resistance you'll meet. That resistance is proof you're pressing into new territory. And guess what? New territory comes with new challenges. That's how you grow. There is no version of greatness that doesn't include rejection. There is no legend, no leader, no innovator who didn't get turned down, dismissed, criticized, or laughed at. But the difference is how they processed it. Most people absorb no like poison. The greats alchemize it into fuel. They turn every closed door into pressure that sharpens their edge. They take every not yet and turn it into a stronger I will. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. You have to build a mindset that is immune to no. Not in the sense that it doesn't affect you emotionally. You're human. Of course it will sting. But you don't let that sting paralyze you. You let it educate you. You let it refine your hunger. You let it build your emotional armor. That's the key. You have to become so grounded in your mission, so connected to your purpose, that someone else's no can't override your internal yes. When someone tells you no, it's not the end of your story. It's just one sentence in a much larger chapter. And often, it's the sentence that creates the turning point. Because it's after the rejection that you dig deeper, you ask better questions, you show up with more intensity, and you finally break through. And sometimes, when you look back, you realize that what felt like rejection was actually protection. You realize that the delay forced you to develop in ways you wouldn't have if everything had gone your way. You realize that being told no made you dangerous, because now you're not just chasing a dream, you're chasing it with the fire of someone who's been counted out and came back anyway. Rejection isn't personal, it isn't permanent, it's directional, and it's up to you whether that direction becomes a detour or a destiny. The choice is always yours. The no doesn't have power over you. Your response does, your ability to keep moving. To keep trying, to keep evolving, to learn the lesson, to raise your standards, to revisit your strategy. And most of all, to never let someone else's limitation become the ceiling for your vision. Most people live their entire lives under the illusion that they're stuck in a job they hate, stuck in a toxic environment, stuck in a loop of failure, stuck in patterns of procrastination. Addiction, self-doubt, and mediocrity, but they're not stuck. They're conditioned. There's a massive difference. Being stuck implies there's no way out. But conditioning is learned, and what's learned can be unlearned. What's programmed can be reprogrammed. And the moment you understand that your life is not a product of permanent limitations, but of mental and emotional patterns you've repeated over and over again, you realize that freedom is much closer than you think. From the moment you were born, you were being programmed. Your parents, teachers, media, religion, society, all of it was feeding your subconscious mind with instructions. Instructions on what to believe, how to behave, what's possible, what's not, who you are, and who you'll never be. These beliefs weren't chosen by you, they were installed in you, and by the time you reached adulthood, you didn't even question them. You thought they were you, but they're not. They're programs, and they're running in the background of your mind, dictating your decisions, shaping your self-image, creating your reality. This is why people feel trapped, because their paradigm, the internal system of beliefs and behaviors, has created a box around their potential. It's invisible but powerful. It tells them you're not good enough, you'll never succeed, people like you don't get ahead, be realistic, stay safe, don't try too hard. And because those voices sound familiar, they mistake them for truth. But they're not truth. They're just repeated thoughts you never challenged. Thoughts that were repeated so many times they turned into beliefs. And beliefs, once they root into the subconscious, become the blueprint of your life. Your subconscious mind does not respond to logic. It responds to repetition. You can read every self-help book, listen to every motivational speaker, watch hours of content, but if your subconscious program says you're broke, unworthy, incapable, or inferior, nothing changes. The old programming overrides every new desire. And that's why so many people feel stuck, because they are trying to change their life with surface-level actions without ever upgrading the operating system underneath it all. Think of it like this. Your life is a reflection of your internal settings. If you have a thermostat set to 70 degrees, no matter how much cold air you blow in or how hot it gets outside, the system will eventually regulate itself back to 70. That's what your paradigm does. You can make a little extra money, get into a good relationship, start a fitness plan, have a short-term breakthrough, but if your paradigm isn't aligned with that new reality, it will pull you back down. Self-sabotage kicks in. You lose the money. The relationship falls apart. You quit the gym. Not because you're weak or broken, but because the old programming doesn't match the new results, and the mind always fights to return to familiarity. The only way out is to shift the paradigm, to interrupt the pattern, to deliberately recondition the mind with new beliefs that serve you instead of sabotage you. But this requires more than awareness. It requires effort, consistency, and commitment. You have to take full responsibility for your mind, even if the people who programmed you didn't. That's the hard truth. It's not your fault how you were conditioned, but it is your responsibility to rewire it. Reprogramming your mind starts with examining your current beliefs. What do you really believe about money, success, relationships, your body, your worth? Not what you say you believe, what your life reveals. Because your outer world will always reflect your inner beliefs. If you're broke, struggling, stuck, unhappy, there's a belief system beneath that experience that is supporting it. And until you replace it with something new, nothing truly changes. You must saturate your mind with new instructions. Repetition is key. You must impress new beliefs into your subconscious over and over until they become dominant. Visualization, affirmations, written goals, emotional rehearsal, all of it plays a role. But most importantly, you must begin acting as if the new belief is already true. Behavior must match intention, because nothing rewires the brain faster than experience. When you act as if you are already the person you want to become, the brain begins to create new neural pathways. The unfamiliar becomes familiar, the impossible becomes expected, and over time your paradigm begins to shift. It won't happen overnight, and it won't feel comfortable, but that's the sign that it's working. Growth feels like resistance. Your mind will try to pull you back to the old way. It will say, this is too hard, this isn't you, why even try? That's the old programming fighting for survival. And you have to be ruthless enough to ignore it. You have to override the default settings of your life with conscious intention. Day by day, choice by choice, thought by thought, people wait their whole lives for some external force to come and change their situation. They think the right job, the right partner, the right timing will save them, but the truth is, no change lasts until the inner world changes first. The world responds to your frequency, and your frequency is generated by your beliefs, your identity, your paradigm. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So if you want a better life, you don't need to chase it. You need to become the person who naturally lives that life. And that process starts by upgrading the beliefs running silently beneath the surface. The reality is you're not stuck. You've just been living under a set of instructions you never chose, following a program that doesn't serve you anymore. The moment you become aware of it is the moment you gain power, power to question, power to decide, power to replace the old with the new. But only if you have the courage to confront the uncomfortable truth. Your current reality is not the result of fate or luck. It's the result of your paradigm. And the good news is, paradigms can be rewritten. Every emotion you feel is energy. It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's not just something that happens to you. It's a force that wants to move through you. But most people don't understand that. They see negative emotions like fear, anger, guilt, shame, anxiety, and sadness as obstacles, things to avoid, suppress, or deny. They treat those emotions like enemies, like toxic waste to be buried under positivity or distractions. But what they fail to realize is that those very emotions are the most powerful sources of energy they possess if they know how to transmute them. Negative emotions are not the problem. The relationship you have with them is. Because when you push them away, when you try to numb them, when you pretend they don't exist, you're actually turning raw energy into poison. Not because the emotion is bad, but because suppressed energy always turns inward, it festers, it creates anxiety. It fuels addictions, it builds resentment, and it keeps you locked in cycles of self-sabotage. You can't outperform unprocessed emotion. It's always waiting for a moment of weakness to show itself. So instead of avoiding it, you have to face it, not to wallow in it, but to understand it, harness it, and redirect it toward your evolution. Fear is energy, so is rage, so is heartbreak, so is guilt. These emotions contain tremendous voltage. And that voltage can either destroy you or drive you, depending on how you respond to it. Most people let their negative emotions define them. They say, I'm just an anxious person, I'm always angry, I'm broken. No, you're not. You're not your feelings. You're the awareness behind the feelings. And that awareness has the power to observe those emotions, hold them, extract the lesson from them, and use them as fuel to change your behavior, your mindset, and your life. Think about this. Some of the greatest art, the most profound poetry, the most disruptive businesses, the most life-altering decisions have come from emotional pain. People don't just create from joy, they create from pressure, from grief, from longing, from betrayal. That's the fire that refines character, but you don't even need to be a creator to understand this. You just need to stop running from yourself. Because every time you suppress a negative emotion, you're suppressing an opportunity to grow. Every negative feeling is a signal. It's a message from within, and if you learn to decode that message, it becomes a map. Let's take fear, for example. Most people experience fear and shut down. They retreat. They procrastinate. But fear is actually a directional compass. It points you toward your edge. It shows you where your next level of growth is. It says here, right here, this is the place where you need to step up. And when you start interpreting fear that way, as a trigger for action instead of paralysis, your whole relationship with it changes. You stop being owned by it and start being moved by it. The same goes for anger. Anger is one of the most potent sources of transformation available to you. But only if you use it wisely. When anger is unprocessed, it leads to destruction, fights, explosions, regrets. But when anger is owned, examined, and directed, it becomes determination. It becomes drive. It becomes a laser beam of focus that says, I will never tolerate this again. That kind of anger builds empires, it heals bloodlines, it flips lives upside down, but only if you stop judging it and start channeling it. Even grief, which feels like a heavy fog, contains deep wisdom. Grief reminds you of what mattered. It reminds you of what you lost, yes, but also of what you loved. And that love, that connection, can fuel purpose. It can give your journey meaning. So many people build missions, movements, and momentum from the pain of loss. Not because they escaped the grief, but because they alchemized it. The alchemy of emotion is not about pretending everything is fine. It's not about toxic positivity or putting a smile on your face while you're falling apart inside. That's spiritual bypassing, and it never works. The alchemy of emotion means sitting with your pain, hearing it out, and then asking, what do I do with this? Not why is this happening to me, but what can this become through me? That shift is everything, because it moves you from victim to creator. It gives you agency over your own internal landscape. You have to start thinking of your emotions as energy centers, each with their own message and purpose. Resentment, it's showing you where you gave your power away. Shame, it's showing you where you're judging yourself by someone else's standards. Envy, it's showing you what you secretly want but haven't allowed yourself to claim. Instead of rejecting these emotions, interrogate them. Learn from them, and then redirect them into your work, your training, your business, your art, your relationships. Turn that emotional charge into something real. The body remembers what the mind tries to ignore. If you've been feeling stuck, low energy, numb, disconnected, it's not because you're lazy. It's because you're holding on to emotions that haven't been metabolized. And when you begin to process them, when you let them flow instead of forcing them into hiding, you unlock massive reserves of energy. That energy was never lost. It was just trapped behind the dam of suppression. And when it breaks free, it doesn't just free your feelings, it frees your power. Look at the most driven people on earth. Behind their discipline is pain. Behind their motivation is a wound. But the difference is they made it useful. They didn't let it rot. They didn't let it go stale inside them. They lit a fire with it and built something out of the ashes. You can do the same. You don't need to wait until you're healed to take action. In fact, action often is the healing. When you move through your pain, when you let your emotions become energy in motion, you begin to remember what it means to be alive. You stop living like a ghost. You stop numbing. You start feeling, and from that feeling comes creation. From that creation comes transformation. From that transformation comes freedom.